I'm so sorry. I just want to come home with this.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry I did because I thought I had to. And yeah, I know that's not a very good excuse, but I'm not trying to excuse myself. I'm just trying to explain my actions.
In the midst of reality where selflessness and care should be given, some crimes defy humanity. These cases are not just shocking, they're almost unbelievable. From Joseph McEnroe's ruthless family betrayals to Martez Abram's deranged acts of violence, these criminals carried out horrors beyond comprehension. Let's begin.
911?
There's been a murder. There's 3 people dead that I can see right now.
Inside?
I just came up. She works with me.
Inside the house?
Yes.
What do you see?
There's a baby and a man and a woman, and she's my best friend.
On December 24, 2007, police received a chilling 911 call from a woman reporting a mass murder in Carnation, Washington. The victims, 6 members of the Anderson family spanning 3 generations, were brutally killed. The tragedy devastated the small town as Wayne and Judy Anderson, their son Scott, his wife Erica, and their 2 young children, Olivia and Nathan, lost their lives. Christmas Eve 2007, a time meant for joy in family gatherings, turned into a nightmare for the Anderson family in Carnation, Washington. Michelle Kristen Anderson, the youngest daughter of Wayne and Judy Anderson, arrived at her parents' home with her boyfriend, Joseph Thomas McEnroe. But instead of holiday cheer, they brought a sinister plan. Michelle harbored deep resentment towards her family, believing they had mistreated her for years. She felt her parents favored her brother, resented him for allegedly owing her money, and saw their treatment of her as unfair. These grievances festered into something unthinkable. Consumed by anger, she convinced McEnroe to help her carry out a horrific plan, driven by revenge and a twisted sense of entitlement. That afternoon, as Judy wrapped presents, Michelle attempted to shoot her, but her gun jammed. McEnroe quickly stepped in, fatally shooting both Wayne and Judy. Instead of fleeing, the couple cleaned up the scene and waited for the rest of the family, Michelle's brother, his wife, and their 2 young children, to arrive. When they walked through the door, chaos erupted. Michelle opened fire on her brother as his wife frantically tried to call 911, but McEnroe silenced her before she could. What followed was pure horror. Fearing the children might expose them, Michelle and McEnroe made an unthinkable decision. In a final act of cruelty, they took the lives of 2 innocent children, ensuring no witnesses remained. What should have been a night of togetherness became a haunting reminder of a family lost too soon.
Wants something, she's going to go for it again and again and again, and this does not stop, unfortunately, when she kills her family. It continues even after she's in jail, right?
When officers responded to the 911 call received by a friend, they found the gate locked. Seeing no signs of trouble, they left, unaware of the horror inside. The cries for help had gone unanswered, and a chance to save lives was lost. The murders went undiscovered for 2 days until Judy's best friend, Linda Thiel, went to the Anderson home and saw the bodies through the window, leading police to uncover the catastrophe. Both Michelle and Joseph were arrested after confessing to the killings. They were later convicted of 6 counts of first-degree murder, and each was condemned to life in prison. As the sentence was announced, Joseph breaks down in court and Michelle starts crying.
Anderson, the result is pretty much preordained. With 6 consecutive sentences of life imprisonment without the possibility of release or parole.
It's the opportunity to live out your life to its natural end.
Convicted killer Joseph McEnroe broke down, grabbed his head, and cried.
The emotional toll of the Carnation murders was devastating. A family's holiday celebration turned into a nightmare of betrayal, greed, and senseless violence. The community was left in shock, and the surviving relatives were forced to cope with the unimaginable loss of loved ones, especially at the hands of a close family member. The case highlighted the tragic consequences of unresolved conflicts and the destructive power of resentment.
You wiped everybody out, and I'm really sad, and you have ruined my heart.
Joseph's case proves how buried resentment can shatter a family. The next case unveils how a seemingly routine dumpster fire will leave a haunting impact on the entire neighborhood.
I have sat here for a month and listened to what this animal did to their loved ones. There is no answer.
On the morning of September 22, 2021, firefighters in Fort Worth, Texas responded to a routine dumpster fire. Expecting to find nothing more than burning debris, they instead uncovered a gruesome scene. Human body parts, badly burned, dismembered, and missing several limbs. The horrifying discovery quickly made headlines, shocking the nation with its sheer brutality. As investigators pieced together the evidence, they reviewed security footage from nearby businesses. The footage showed a man carrying large bins and dumping them into the dumpster. That man was soon identified as 44-year-old electrician's apprentice, Jason Thornburg. But what detectives uncovered next was even more horrifying. When questioned by police, Thornburg showed no hesitation in confessing. He admitted to murdering 3 people: David Luaris, 42, Lauren Phillips, 34, and Maricruz Mathis, 33. But for him, these weren't just killings. He described them as human sacrifices. David Luaris, Thornburg's roommate at a motel in Euless, Texas, was his first victim. Convinced that Luaris needed to be sacrificed, Thornburg slit his throat, dismembered his body in the bathtub, and placed the remains in trash bags. Days later, he bought large plastic bins to store the body parts. Lauren Phillips and Maricruz Mathis met the same fate in the motel room. Though Thornburg barely knew them, he believed they too needed to be sacrificed. He slit one woman's throat and placed her remains in a storage bin. 2 days later, when the second woman visited, he stabbed and strangled her, storing her body the same way. After storing the bodies in his motel room for days, Thornburg finally decided to dispose of them. He transported the bins to the dumpster, doused them in accelerants, and set them ablaze.
The death penalty is reserved for the most heinous of crimes and the most evil of people, and that is Jason. If not Jason Thornburg, then who?
As police dug deeper, they discovered that this wasn't Thornburg's first crime. He admitted to killing his ex-girlfriend, Tanya Begay, in Arizona back in 2017. He also confessed to murdering his former roommate, Mark Jewell, 61, in May 2021. In that case, Thornburg slit Jewell's throat, turned on a gas line, and lit a candle, causing an explosion. Disturbingly, he even attended Jewell's funeral and spoke about his friendship with him. Thornburg claimed he had an in-depth knowledge of the Bible and believed that he was called by God to commit these sacrifices. Despite his shocking statements, he insisted that his life's purpose was to serve God and help others. Authorities quickly built a case against Thornburg, charging him with capital murder, arson, and mistreatment of a human corpse. Initially, his mental health was called into question, but after multiple evaluations, he was declared fit to stand trial. His trial began in November 2023, and during the proceedings, even more disturbing details emerged. Thornburg admitted that after killing David Luaris, he ate part of his heart before disposing of the remains. The jury didn't need much time to deliberate. In December 2023, Jason Thornburg was found guilty of capital murder and sentenced to death, but Jason showed no guilt for his heinous act.
The special issues making it mandatory that your punishment be death. Therefore, this court sentences you, Jason Allen Thornburg, to death.
As the verdict was announced, the victim's family broke down in tears.
We must call evil, evil.
I hope that you receive forgiveness in heaven, because I don't think I can do it.
This case serves as a haunting reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind closed doors. The victims' deaths left their families shattered. Thornburg believed he was carrying out a divine mission, but in reality, he committed unthinkable acts of violence. His sentencing delivered justice, ensuring he would never harm another soul.
Show no remorse for what you did. You won't even tell us where she's at.
The Thornburg case is startling, heartbreaking, and unforgettable. But what comes next is even more chilling. It reveals how a thriving night can spiral into deadly consequences.
There was a guy outside of the car who looked like he was bleeding from multiple spots.
Late one night in Norwood, police received a chilling 911 call. The caller's voice hinted at something deeply unsettling. Officers rushed to the scene, unaware that what they were about to encounter would change the lives of 2 families forever. Portia Brooks and her boyfriend, Aaron Martin, sat in a parked car, enjoying a peaceful moment when danger approached. Suddenly, out of the darkness, Jaleel Smith Riley emerged, gun in hand. He walked straight to their car and knocked on the window, his presence sending a wave of fear through the couple. Smith Riley ordered Martin to step out of the car. Hoping to survive, Martin obeyed, but Smith Riley showed no mercy. He searched Martin's pockets for anything valuable. Then, without warning, he raised his gun and fired. The bullet struck Martin in the head, and he collapsed, barely clinging to life. Smith Riley wasn't finished. He turned to Portia, still sitting in the car with no time to escape. Without hesitation, he fired twice. She slumped over, wounded and helpless. With his cruel act complete, Smith Riley vanished into the night, leaving devastation behind. Aaron Martin miraculously survived, but Portia's injuries were too severe. 3 days later, she succumbed to her wounds, leaving her family heartbroken. Their lives were forever changed.
These persons, these monsters, saw them as a chance to do a robbery. They were sitting in the car.
After being questioned, Smith eventually admitted to the crime, but he wasn't the only one responsible. Police believe 2 other men were involved in the attack that night. One of them was Randall Byrd III. However, before he could face justice, he was killed in a separate shooting in Michigan. The second suspect, Josiah Fouse, was also on law enforcement's radar. Authorities found him in Michigan, where he was arrested for a different murder. While he hadn't been charged for the Norwood shooting, investigators believed he played a role that night. As the case unfolded, the victims' families waited anxiously for justice. The loss of Portia Brooks and the trauma Aaron Martin endured will never be forgotten. Smith Riley's confession marked the first step towards closure, but the fight for full justice was far from over. Years later, Smith Riley stood in court, facing the weight of his crimes. In August, he pleaded guilty to aggravated murder and attempted murder, hoping to escape the death penalty. But as the sentencing day neared, he had a sudden change of heart. Ignoring his lawyer's advice, he tried to withdraw his plea. Judge Charles Kubicki was unmoved by Smith Riley's plea. He denied the request and sentenced him to life in prison without parole, plus an additional 11 years for attempted murder. As the weight of his fate sank in, Smith Riley collapsed onto the courtroom floor.
Four defendants serve a term of life without parole. As to count 4 for the offense of attempted murder.
Officers quickly pulled him to his feet, but he wasn't done. In a moment of desperation, he shouted something unintelligible. No one knew exactly who he was addressing, but his outburst did not affect the verdict. For the victims' families, the sentencing was a mix of relief and sorrow. Portia Brooks' mother, Sharon, carried her daughter's ashes to every court hearing, a heartbreaking tribute to the life stolen from her. Through tears, she spoke of the immense pain Smith Riley had caused. He not only killed her, but he killed me mentally and emotionally. He killed my identity as a mother of 3, she said, her voice filled with anguish.
He killed me mentally, emotionally. He killed my identity as a mother of 3, as a family of 4.
Brooks' sister, Tia Marie, pleaded with the judge to ensure Smith Riley never walked free again. I have to deal with life without Portia, so he should have to deal with life without parole.
Judge handing down that sentence today to a man who admitted to killing a young woman and badly injuring her boyfriend in 2013.
In the end, the court delivered the harshest sentence possible. Smith Riley would never walk free, just as Brooks' family would never see their beloved Portia again. The tragedy left an indelible scar on everyone involved, a haunting reminder of how one violent night could alter countless lives forever.
And when Portia was always together, they were young, they were in love, and they were happy.
Jaleel's case shows a heart-wrenching loss and irreversible devastation. The next case shows how violence can strike anywhere, even in places we feel safe.
Stop it. Look at the screen, sir.
Yes.
That's you shooting him?
Yes.
And you admit that you shot him in cold blood?
Yes.
On July 30th, 2019, an ordinary day at a Walmart in South Haven, Mississippi, descended into horror. Shoppers and employees were going about their routines when gunfire shattered the calm. Martez Abram, a longtime Walmart employee, entered the store and opened fire, killing 2 co-workers and injuring a police officer. That morning, 40-year-old Anthony Brown and 38-year-old Brandon Gales were working as usual when the unthinkable happened. Abram, employed at Walmart for nearly 20 years, walked in with a gun and began shooting. Panic spread as employees and customers scrambled for safety. Amid the chaos, Abram even attempted to set fire to the store, escalating the terror. Within minutes, South Haven police arrived and confronted Abram, ultimately shooting and subduing him. Investigators later discovered an AK-47 in his possession. One officer noted that if Abram had reached for the weapon, the AK-47 would have cut us in half at that distance. As the trial unfolded, prosecutors highlighted that Abram had no prior criminal record, but his eerie courtroom demeanor made his testimony all the more unsettling. His defense team pushed for leniency, citing his mental state in an attempt to avoid the death penalty.
You shooting him?
Yes.
And you admit that you shot him in cold blood?
Yes.
The evidence against Abram was damning. Prosecutors painted a vivid picture of the brutal attack and the lasting devastation it caused for the victims' families. The jury deliberated for just over 50 minutes before finding Abram guilty of 2 counts of capital murder and 1 count of attempted murder. However, sentencing took nearly 3 hours. The defense pleaded for life without parole, but the jury ultimately ruled that the severity of the crime warranted the death penalty.
Sentence you to death. Count 2, you will be sentenced to death. In count 3, you will be sentenced to...
During the sentencing hearing, family members of the victims shared their heartbreak. Tracy Tucker Norman, speaking on behalf of Brandon Gale's family, expressed the deep pain of trying to understand Abram's actions.
God requires us to forgive you for what you did. It didn't happen overnight. Forgiveness didn't come that easily.
Your sins, and He is the only one that can save your soul.
Despite their sorrow, the families found it in their hearts to forgive Abram, though they firmly believed he should face the full extent of the law. Even Abram's sister, Monique, spoke about how he had grown distant over the years. She recalled an eerie moment when he walked past her in a Walmart aisle, ignoring her as if she were a stranger. She mourned the brother she once knew, unable to reconcile him with the man who committed such a horrific act. In the end, the jury sentenced Martez Abram to death, ensuring he would never harm another person again. He also received a life sentence for attempted murder. The judge will officially finalize his sentence at a later date, but for the victims' families, justice has been served. Following the trial, District Attorney Robert R. Morris reflected on the tragedy. He acknowledged the immense sorrow that united everyone in the courtroom, but reassured the victims' families that his support for them would extend far beyond the trial.
Of both victims took to the stands to read statements before the judge handed down her sentence. Here is what some of them had to say.
Up next, we have the case of Adam Matos.
Did you kill him?
Yes.
Why?
He tried to kill me.
Did Gregory Brown threaten your life?
Yes, he did.
Did he pull the trigger?
Yes.
On August 28, 2014, Adam Matos was arrested after a horrifying crime that left everyone deeply unsettled. He was charged with the brutal murders of his ex-girlfriend, Megan Brown, her parents, and her new boyfriend. The details of the case were horrifying, as Matos shot and beat all 4 victims before leaving his young son alone with their bodies for days. The details of the crime committed by Adam Matos are deeply unsettling. After taking the lives of Megan Brown, her parents, and her new boyfriend, Matos left his 4-year-old son alone with the bodies for several days. Only the young boy was left who witnessed all the scenes. The child, despite being so young, had vivid memories of the painful events. After the killings, Matos moved the bodies to a berm by the roadside, disturbing them. His actions raised suspicion when he sold the family's dogs on Craigslist and used Megan's credit card to buy pizza after the murders. These strange actions led to further investigation and eventually his arrest.
The body's away from the house. I didn't want Tristan being exposed to all the blood and the bodies and the smell, so I attempted to put them in a bin.
The boy, who had endured an unimaginable trauma, was later taken in by Megan's cousin and her family. Although he was so young, the memories of that day stayed with him. His story became a heartbreaking part of the case, adding to the tragedy that shook the community. Matos' shocking crimes left lasting scars on everyone involved, especially the young child who witnessed it all. During his trial, Adam Matos claimed he acted in self-defense, but the jury wasn't convinced by his explanation. His testimony, which lasted for hours, was all captured on camera and later featured in the What Lies Beneath series. Despite his defense, the jury carefully considered the evidence and found Matos guilty of 4 counts of first-degree murder. As the trial unfolded, it became clear that Matos' actions were both shocking and disturbing. His lack of remorse and the coldness he displayed throughout the proceedings made it hard for anyone to believe his claims of self-defense. The details of the case, including his treatment of his young son and the way he disposed of the bodies, left the jury with no doubt about his guilt.
Agonizing process for the victims' families. We spoke with the father of one of them as jurors handed down that verdict. He tells us he feels relief whether there's a death penalty or not.
In the end, the jury sentenced Matos to life in prison without the possibility of parole. His conviction brought a sense of justice for the victims and their families, though nothing could undo the pain and trauma caused by his crimes. The story of Matos' actions remains a haunting reminder of the devastating impact of violence on innocent lives. Today, Adam Matos remains incarcerated at the Blackwater River Correctional Facility, serving his life sentence. Although he faced the possibility of the death penalty, he narrowly missed it, with 1 juror voting against it. As of 2018, he's 32 years old and continues to serve his sentence in Florida.
Decision of the jury, I sentence you in count 1 and count 4 to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
This case left many shaken, especially considering the young child who witnessed the murders. The emotional toll on the family and the public has been immense. The fact that Matos managed to escape the death penalty only adds to the heartbreak, as the severity of his crime seems to warrant a much harsher punishment. The story is a chilling reminder of how far some individuals will go for selfish reasons and the lasting trauma they leave behind.
That he lost the hands of a murderer. He loves his mother, he loves his grandparents, and he loves us. He does not love you. You stole his whole world. You ruined his whole life, and we are here to pick up the pieces.
Adam Matos left a young child scarred by the horrors he committed. But the next case takes betrayal to a whole new level.
She began to add things that didn't make sense. When we spoke with Tim, it was the same thing. The story was not the same about when they saw each other. Now he had done things that he hadn't mentioned before.
On November 6, 2017, George Young was shot and killed outside his home in Buford, Georgia. His wife, Tia Young, had just lost her husband of 22 years, the father of their 3 children, in what seemed like a random act of violence. Tia appeared heartbroken, and her tearful plea for justice was broadcast to the public. She even set up a GoFundMe account to help with funeral expenses. Months after George Young's tragic death, the truth began to unravel unexpectedly. At first, Tia Young's grief seemed genuine as she mourned her husband's loss. However, as the investigation continued, the story took a shocking turn. Police soon arrested Tia and her lover, Harvey Lee, for George's murder. It was revealed that Tia and Harvey had been having an affair, and together they had planned to kill George to claim his $1 million life insurance policy.
He's eliciting hearsay statements.
The defense not holding back on the state's first witness, Young's former boss and friend, Rob Strickland.
He was my go-to guy.
As detectives dug deeper, they found numerous inconsistencies in the stories that Tia and Harvey had been telling. Tia's initial heartbreak and emotional plea for help started to fade, and her behavior became increasingly suspicious. New evidence began to surface, including messages and phone records showing the affair. It became clear that their actions were not those of grieving loved ones, but rather 2 people involved in a calculated scheme for financial gain. The investigation revealed a web of lies, with Tia and Harvey's actions betraying the trust of a family who believed in their love and loyalty. Their plot, once hidden, was exposed, leaving the community in disbelief over the betrayal and heartbreak that led to George's death. As the trial began, the evidence against Tia and Harvey started to pile up. The jury learned that after George was shot, Tia waited between 5 to 10 minutes before police had come. That alone raised suspicions, as it seemed unusual for a wife to delay reaching out for help after her husband was shot. Investigators also found that the murder weapon was never recovered, and both Tia and Harvey's stories didn't line up. Their accounts had many contradictions, which made it harder for the court to believe their version of events. Further investigation uncovered text messages and photos revealing the affair between Tia and Harvey, exposing the secret they had tried to keep hidden. One of their neighbors even witnessed Harvey tampering with evidence, making it clear that they were trying to cover up their actions. The jury was shocked by how deep the betrayal went.
And I felt like maybe that had something to do with it, but I wasn't sure.
Detectives were stunned.
Tia and Harvey weren't just the grieving spouse and supportive lover they had pretended to be. They were the ones responsible for George's death. The truth was undeniable now. The people who should have loved and protected George were the very ones who plotted his murder for financial gain. Tia and Harvey were both convicted of murder. Tia was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole plus 3 years, while Harvey received a sentence without the chance of parole. But Tia has no remorse for her act. The case was a heartbreaking reminder of the lengths some will go for money and how betrayal can come from those closest to us.
She will spend in prison. A jury found Tia Young guilty of felony murder, aggravated assault. Her alleged lover, Harvey Timothy Lee, was convicted of malice murder, felony murder, and aggravated assault.
The story of George Young's murder left everyone in shock. The woman who cried on camera, pleading for help, was revealed to be behind the death of her husband. The betrayal, lies, and manipulation showed how a family can be torn apart by greed and deceit. It was a tragic and emotional case that raised many questions about trust, love, and the dark side of human nature. Tia's calculated betrayal shocked everyone. The next case shows a tragic fall from a fairy tale romance to murder in the poolside shadows.
Okay. All right. She's laying in the pool?
Yes, ma'am. See, I don't know what happened. I just got here to do some work before I talked to her yesterday, and I'm at 8374 Inverness right now.
On February 22, 2014, a tragic discovery was made in the gated Tallahassee community of Golden Eagle. Samira Frasch, a former French model, was found dead in her backyard pool by a handyman and his young son. Her strappy sandals lay near the pool, one partially submerged in the water. Samira's life had transformed from humble beginnings in Madagascar to a world of glamour and luxury. In 2006, while in Paris, she met Dr. Adam Frasch, a successful podiatrist, and they quickly fell in love. Their connection felt like a fairy tale. Samira thought she had found her Prince Charming as Adam showered her with gifts and affection. Their life together seemed perfect. They got married and had 2 children. Living in Tallahassee, they enjoyed a life filled with expensive cars, lavish vacations, and grand events. Samira even dreamed of creating a children's clothing line with her daughter as the star of the show. They were often seen in public with their daughter, Hyra, dressed in custom outfits and posing for cameras. But behind the glitz and glamour, there were cracks in their marriage. Adam's infidelity and the constant tension between them began to take a toll on their relationship. Samira was no longer willing to ignore the signs and filed for divorce. The separation seemed to be the final straw for Adam. Their once fairy tale romance was unraveling. Just days after the divorce papers were filed, Samira's life came to a tragic and unexpected end in her backyard, leaving everyone shocked.
He had so many other women. He was going to strip clubs.
I dated like 3 different women.
At first, authorities thought Samira's death might have been a tragic accident. Maybe she slipped and fell into the pool. But as investigators looked closer at the scene, things didn't add up. Her sandals were found near the pool, one partially in the water, which seemed strange for someone who had fallen into the pool. The way her body was positioned and the surroundings raised more questions. The medical examiner's report revealed blunt force trauma to Samira's head, along with drowning, showing that her death wasn't an accident, but a case of foul play. The investigation then turned to Adam as they learned more about his troubled past and rocky relationship with Samira. The couple had faced many issues, including Adam's multiple affairs and constant fights over the years. The more they dug, the more investigators found that Adam had a motive, and the evidence began to point to him.
Who advises him that his wife, Kendall, has heard that his wife, Samira Frasch, has been found dead in the pool at the Inverness Drive address.
Surveillance footage showed Adam leaving the house on the morning of Samira's death, but other footage and witness accounts placed him at the scene in ways that raised suspicion. His past actions and the growing tension between him and Samira made investigators believe that Adam was responsible for her tragic death. Investigators pieced together the final moments leading to Samira's death. On the morning of February 22nd, Adam claimed he left for a beach house with their children, but evidence suggested otherwise. Adam was arrested and charged with Samira's murder. Despite his insistence that he loved his wife and would never mistreat her, the jury convicted him of first-degree murder after only 90 minutes of deliberations. He was sentenced to life in prison. While listing his sentence, Adam remained calm and accepted the decision, as if he's not guilty of his act.
I have no discretion other than to impose a life sentence. That's the only legal sentence at this point in time.
The tragic end to Samira's life left behind not only a grieving family, but also a community shaken by the realization that sometimes the people closest to us can harbor the darkest secrets. The case served as a reminder of the hidden struggles that can exist behind closed doors, even in seemingly perfect lives.
I think she was a good mom. She seemed very interested in providing the best life for her children. She had an interesting way of going about that.
Samira's life of glamour ended in heartbreak at the hands of someone she trusted. But the next case shows a son turning on his parents in a horrifying twist of violence.
Did you hear anything back?
No.
And did that concern you?
Yes.
In July 2021, the Halderson family from Windsor, Wisconsin was struck by a tragic and shocking event. Bart and Krista Halderson, a couple with 2 sons, mysteriously vanished. Chandler, their 23-year-old son, reported them missing, claiming they had gone to their cabin for the 4th of July weekend. However, things would soon take a dark turn. As the days went on, with no sign of Bart and Krista, the mystery deepened. Chandler, their son, continued to insist that his parents had gone to their family cabin for the 4th of July weekend. But as authorities dug deeper, things didn't quite add up. His story seemed to change, and some inconsistencies raised questions. His behavior started to seem odd too, with little concern for his missing parents.
Chandler Halderson murdered his parents. It's an important date, and it's an important time to remember. July 1st.
The investigation took a chilling turn when detectives received a tip that led them to a nearby farm. There, they discovered human remains, and the shock of finding these remains was only intensified when it was revealed that they belonged to Bart. Now, the police began to wonder if Chandler's story was more than just a lie. It could be something much darker. The pieces of the puzzle didn't fit together, and suspicions grew that Chandler might be hiding the truth. As the investigation continued, Chandler's narrative started to unravel. What had seemed like a simple case of a missing couple was now looking more like a crime, involving the very person who claimed to be looking for them. The truth was beginning to surface, and Chandler was slowly becoming the prime suspect. As the investigation progressed, Chandler's involvement started to become clearer. The remains found on the farm were confirmed to be his father Bart, but his mother Krista was still missing. Detectives were determined to find her, and a breakthrough came through an unexpected source: Chandler's Snapchat data. It revealed that Chandler had been in a specific area near his favorite swimming hole, a place he often visited. With this new information, authorities focused their search on that location. It was there, hidden in the quiet and remote area, that they made a heartbreaking discovery. Krista's body was found, bringing a tragic end to the search for both of Chandler's parents. The investigators had now uncovered the truth that the son who had been pleading for help in finding his missing parents was the one who had caused their deaths.
We, the jury, find the defendant Chandler M. Halderson guilty of first-degree intentional homicide as to Bart A. Halderson as charged in count 1 of the amended information.
The discovery of Krista's remains was a devastating moment, and the truth behind the tragic disappearances was now clear. Chandler's lies had been exposed, and the pieces of the puzzle were finally coming together, showing the extent of the crime he had committed. Chandler's lies were exposed. It turned out that he had been fabricating stories about his life, including his college attendance and job prospects. In a desperate attempt to cover up his deceit, Chandler murdered both his parents. He was arrested and charged with murder, dismemberment, and hiding the bodies of Bart and Krista.
I have to, for this sentence, ensure that the only time Mr. Halderson comes back into the community is to have the privilege of a burial that he denied his parents.
The case sent shockwaves through the public, as it was a betrayal of the highest order. Chandler's actions left everyone in disbelief. As the trial unfolded, it became clear that the murders were motivated by Chandler's desire to maintain the illusion of success in his life. The jury ultimately convicted him, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Yet he remained emotionless.
Krista Halderson's oldest friend was also in the courtroom. She handed out yellow roses in memory of Bart and Krista. That friend nodded along as prosecution listed their reasons why Chandler Halderson should not be allowed.
The tragic end of Bart and Krista Halderson is a reminder of how deep deception can go, leaving a family and community forever changed.
Unknown type of bullet with the words "get well soon" on it.
Up next, we have the case of Demetrius Blackwell.
Killer. You realize what you did? You killed a man for no reason at all.
On May 2, 2015, tragedy struck Queens Village, New York. Officer Brian Moore, a 25-year-old NYPD officer with a promising future, was shot in the line of duty while patrolling in an unmarked car. The event shocked the city, leaving behind deep sorrow and outrage over the death of a young man who dedicated his life to protecting others. It started when Moore and his partner, Officer Eric Jansen, were patrolling undercover in Queens Village, New York. They were on the lookout for potential burglary suspects when they noticed a man behaving suspiciously. He appeared to be fiddling with something in his jeans, which caught the officer's attention. As they approached him to ask a few questions, he suddenly turned and opened fire without any warning. A bullet struck him in the head, critically injuring him. Officer Jansen narrowly avoided harm but was left shaken by the unexpected attack. The incident escalated quickly, leaving him in critical condition. He was rushed to the hospital where doctors worked tirelessly to save his life. Despite their best efforts, he sorrowfully passed away 2 days later. His death left a deep space in the hearts of his family, who were overwhelmed with grief. The NYPD, along with the entire community, mourns the passing of a brave and dedicated officer. At just 25 years old, he had committed his life to protecting others, and his untimely death became a solemn reminder of the dangers faced by law enforcement every day.
Meanwhile, 37, and with a criminal history. He showed no remorse in the courtroom. His defense attorney had tried to argue that his seizure disorder and various mental disabilities.
Demetrius Blackwell was arrested shortly after being identified in a lineup. Prosecutors presented strong evidence against him, including his DNA found on 2 bullets in the weapon cylinder, which confirmed his guilt. During the trial, Blackwell's defense argued that he suffered from severe epilepsy and psychosis. They claimed his mental state was impaired, which led to the shooting. However, the prosecution emphasized the intentionality of Blackwell's actions, stating that he acted deliberately, and there was no sign of self-control due to his mental health.
My world was forever changed. My world was forever turned completely upside down, unrecognizable to me anymore. I was left racked by pain.
The evidence against the defendant was overwhelming. It was revealed that while Moore was fighting for his life, he seemed unconcerned. Instead, he focused on the outcome of a boxing match, showing complete indifference to the calamity he caused. This lack of empathy and his blatant disregard for the consequences of his actions deeply angered the public and the jury. His behavior after the shooting reinforced the claim that he had no shame for his act. This callous attitude, combined with the physical evidence, ensured a strong case against him, leading to his conviction for the murder of the officer. After a 3-week trial, a jury convicted the defendant on all charges, including first-degree murder. The judge sentenced Blackwell to life in prison without the chance of parole. Still, he acts not guilty of his act. The death deeply affected some of the police officers, too, along with his family.
He looked away from the overflow crowd of police officers in the courtroom. Some of the officers were crying. But in his torn white jumpsuit, Blackwell showed no emotion at the reading of the list of charges,
ensuring he would never harm another person again. His family, though relieved by the verdict, remained heartbroken, knowing no amount of justice could fill the gap left by his death. The murder of the officer serves as a stark reminder of the risks law enforcement officers face daily. Moore, posthumously promoted to detective first grade, made 150 arrests and earned 2 medals during his 5 years of service. His father, uncle, and cousin, also members of the NYPD, spoke of his bravery and dedication. Thousands of officers from across the country attended his funeral to honor his sacrifice. Though fairness was served, the throes of his passing linger in the hearts of his family and colleagues, and his story remains a poignant testament to the courage of those who serve and protect. As one of the police officers said, "You cannot raise your hand to New York City.
You cannot raise a hand to a New York City police officer. If you do, we will not forget."
Officer Moore's mournful death marked a devastating loss for his family and the NYPD. The next case shows how a single moment of violence shattered a community.
If you see me with a straight face, it's not because I just have no feeling or I just hate people. I'm just some kind of cold-blooded killer.
On July 13, 2008, the peaceful town of Twinsburg, Ohio was shaken by a tale that no one saw coming. Officer Joseph McEnroe, a respected and well-loved member of the Twinsburg Police Department, had been working a late-night shift when he stopped a vehicle for loud music and suspected drunk driving. That routine traffic stop would soon turn into a heartbreaking story of grief and justice. He was a dedicated police officer, a loving husband, and a proud father to his infant daughter. On the night of July 13, 2008, his shift brought him to a quiet intersection at State Route 91 and Glenwood Drive in Twinsburg, Ohio. There, he pulled over a vehicle for loud music and suspected drunk driving. When he looked inside the car, he saw 23-year-old Ashford Thompson and his girlfriend, Danielle Robertson. And when the officer tried to arrest them, a sudden struggle broke out. Thompson, who had a permit to carry a concealed weapon, pulled out a gun. Panic occurred, and in a distressing turn of events, he shot the officer 4 times, once in the forehead and 3 more times as he lay on the ground.
Do you know whether the suspect had left the scene or not?
We did not see the suspect vehicle. We were not sure where the suspect was currently located.
At this time, the officer's loyal canine partner was locked in a police cruiser, unable to help, but by the time help arrived, it was too late to save him, leaving behind a community shattered by the absence of a devoted protector. Officer Miktarian dedicated 11 years of service to the Twinsburg Police Department and also served as a part-time officer with the Uniontown Police. Sadly, he became the first officer in the history of the Twinsburg Police Department to lose his life in the line of duty. This case sent waves of chaos through Twinsburg, where Miktarian was remembered as a hero because of his ultimate sacrifice. After the grievous events at the traffic stop, Ashford Thompson and his girlfriend Danielle Robertson fled the scene in panic. They drove to Thompson's sister's home in Bedford Heights, hoping to cover up what had just happened. Thompson's sister, Bridget Robertson, tried to assist them by taking the gun used in the shooting and hiding it in the stove. But their efforts to erase the evidence and responsibility were in vain. The police were already closing in. Within an hour, officers arrived at the house and arrested Thompson. Despite their best efforts, justice soon caught up with them. His brief escape came to an end, and justice began its pursuit, and Thompson was convicted for all counts by the jury.
We, the jury, being duly impaneled and sworn, find the defendant, Ashford L. Thompson, guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of the offense of aggravated murder.
Meanwhile, Miktarian, a beloved husband and father, was rushed to Metro Health Medical Center by first responders. Catastrophically, the injuries he suffered were too severe, and he passed away shortly after. The death of the officer created a profound emptiness in the hearts of his family, colleagues, and the community he had served so devotedly. In the summer of 2010, Ashford Thompson was convicted of aggravated murder and his death penalty was executed. At the time of sentencing, tears were shed out from his eyes. His appeals claimed that he had a personality disorder and should have been evaluated before standing trial, but the court ultimately upheld his sentence.
I still don't have copies of the things that I've asked for. I don't have a copy of anything. I don't even know what the prosecutor's going to use against me.
His girlfriend and sister were also held accountable for their roles in the aftermath of the crime, receiving probation and house arrest for attempted obstruction of justice. His canine partner retired and lived with the family until his passing in 2011. This story is a devastating reminder of how a single moment can forever change lives. He was not only a dedicated law enforcement officer, but also a loving husband and father. The senselessness of the act leaves a profound ache, deeply felt by his family, friends, and community. While the swift justice delivered provides some solace, today everyone remembers him for his service and sacrifice, hoping his legacy continues to inspire strength and unity in the community he served.
My little girl has to go to a cemetery to sing happy birthday to her dad. And I want you to think about that.
The brutal murder of Officer Miktarian is a painful chapter. The next case shows a police officer's life was taken amid chaos.
I don't want to see him. He should be sent away and never see the light again.
On October 20th, 2015, a woe struck the streets of Harlem when Officer Randolph Holder, A dedicated NYPD officer lost his life in the line of duty. The events leading to his death were both shocking and heartbreaking. Officer Holder, a third-generation policeman, was responding to a chaotic scene of gunfire and gang violence when his life was cruelly taken. The deadly conflict erupted over a gunfight between rival gang members, fighting for control of stolen bikes. At the heart of the chaos was 32-year-old Tyrone Howard, a small-time substance dealer with a lengthy criminal history. In a desperate bid to escape, Howard seized a bike and fled, armed and determined. Officer Holder and his partners swiftly responded to the scene, chasing Howard down a footpath near the Harlem River. As the pursuit escalated, Howard turned and fired a single shot. The bullet struck Officer Holder in the head, taking his life instantly. As the news of Officer Holder's death spread, the community of Harlem mourned. The harrowing death of Officer Holder sent shockwaves across New York City. He was a dedicated and brave officer who served his community with pride and integrity. As the son of a police officer, he was deeply admired for following in his father's footsteps and for his commitment to making the city safer. The NYPD and the community he served mourned the absence of a true hero. Officer Holder's life and service were honored by colleagues, family, and citizens who recognized his sacrifice. His untimely death reminded everyone of the dangers officers face daily and the immense courage they show while protecting others. His legacy remains an inspiration to all. As the tragic events of that night set the stage for a courtroom battle, the trial of Tyrone Howard was intense and emotional, leaving a lasting impact on everyone involved. Prosecutors worked hard to show the court how little regard Howard had for human life. They presented strong evidence to prove he knew exactly what he was doing when he fired the fatal shot that killed him. Every detail pointed to the fact that Howard's actions were deliberate and calculated.
Tyrone Howard hopped off the stolen bike and then shot Holder in the head on an East River footbridge near the FDR Drive. Holder's family did not want to speak on camera, but they stood with the Patrolman Benevolence Association President Pat Lynch.
Howard's defense team tried to deflect responsibility, arguing that the chaos of the situation was not entirely his fault. They claimed he acted out of panic during the violent events of that night. However, their arguments did little to sway the jury. In the end, the jury was not convinced by Howard's defense. They delivered a guilty verdict, ensuring justice for Officer Holder and his grieving family. This trial highlighted the devastating consequences of violence and the courage of those who served to protect others. After 4 days of tense deliberations, the jury delivered its verdict on March 6, 2017. Tyrone Howard was found guilty of aggravated first-degree murder, a charge that carried a mandatory sentence of life without parole. The courtroom was filled with torn feelings, relief from Officer Holder's family and colleagues. Holder's father, Holder Sr., nodded quietly as the verdict was read. His grief was visible as he wiped tears from his eyes. The courtroom, packed with fellow officers, stood united in honoring the memory of a fallen hero. Tyrone Howard, with an expressionless face, showed he had no repentance for his act.
Officer Holder's accused killer. Judges are not allowed to consider how dangerous a criminal is. Got a deferred 2-year sentence in January for diversion rehab programs instead of jail time.
Randall's distressing death left his family and loved ones alone. His absence created an unfillable emptiness in the lives of those who cared for him. This case serves as a sobering reminder of the dangers police officers face daily and the sacrifices they make to keep communities safe. Officer Randolph Holder's life was taken in a split second, but the next case shows a murder that changed the lives of everyone involved.
Maybe it was volitional, he was doing absent himself on purpose, I was thinking. That seemed to be very acute. It was the worst that it had been.
On May 28, 2011, tragedy struck in San Antonio when Deputy Kenneth Vann was ambushed and shot dead while waiting for a traffic light. The shooter, Mark Anthony Gonzalez, launched a barrage of shots from an assault rifle, ending Deputy Vann's life. When he was arrested and convicted of capital murder after a lengthy trial, the community was left grappling with the senseless loss. The pain of Deputy Vann's death was soon followed by a lengthy legal process that seemed to stretch the family's suffering. Throughout the trial, the defendant didn't show any expression, even as the courtroom was filled with the mourning and anguish of Yvonne Vann, the widow of Deputy Kenneth Vann. Gonzalez was accused of pulling alongside the patrol car and firing 46 rounds from an assault rifle, a brutal act that changed the lives of many forever.
This concussion would not have affected his ability to understand the nature of his actions.
Yvonne shared memories of her husband, the small joys they used to share, and the future they had dreamed of together. Now, she explained, those dreams were gone, replaced by a haunting emptiness. She said, "I will never forgive him for what he did."
I have no problem in forgiving Mark Anthony Gonzalez. No, I will never forgive what he did.
As she stood before the court, she was asked if forgiveness was a chance. With tears in her eyes, she answered firmly that it wasn't. Her words depicted a devastating picture of her misfortune, heart-wrench, and the permanent scars left by Gonzalez's actions. Yet, throughout her emotional testimony, he he showed no sign of guilt. After years of anguish and a lengthy legal process, the fate of the defendant was finally decided. In the courtroom, Judge Mary Roman delivered the verdict that many had anticipated. He was condemned to death for the brutal ambush and murder of Deputy Kenneth Vann. As the trial progressed, Yvonne's heartache remained evident, but the legal process continued. The road to this moment had not been simple. Before the formal sentencing could take place, he had to undergo a separate trial to determine his competency. Questions arose about whether he was mentally fit to face the punishment for his actions. Eventually, the court ruled that he was competent to stand trial, clearing the way for the final decision. When the day of judgment arrived, the courtroom was heavy with emotion. Judge Roman's words cut through the silence as she declared that he would face the ultimate penalty under Texas law. And finally, he had to face the death penalty.
You are hereby sentenced in accordance with Texas law to death.
It was not just a legal decision, but a somber conclusion to a story that had devastated a family and shaken a community. Yet, even as justice was served, he sat apathetically, offering no sorrow for the life he had taken. Even though justice had been served, the road to closure was far from complete. Despite the severity of his actions and the irreversible ache caused, his defense team announced plans to file an appeal against the verdict. However, for Yvonne Vann, the verdict didn't bring her husband back. With the verdict in place, Yvonne Vann was left with the painful reality of her husband's absence. The courtroom felt the full weight of Yvonne Vann's words echoing through the room. Her unbearable suffering was palpable as she mourned the future she would never have with her husband. This case serves as a stark reminder of the agony caused to those who loved Deputy Vann. The brutality of these senseless acts shook families, communities, and even the courts as the killers faced justice for their horrific crimes. From family betrayals to unthinkable violence, the sentences handed down left everyone stunned. In our next video on screen, we'll dive into the most disturbing and chilling sentences ever handed down in history.